Max Chadwick. We're live. How you doing,
What's up?
sir? What's up?
Uh,
How's everything going out there? Well, we were catching up a little bit before we started recording, but how's everything out there in New York? New York City? Or just north of New
New
York
York,
City?
yeah, it's good. I was telling you, I mean, New York is opening up slowly. You know, the caseload for COVID has been pretty low here since, I mean, there was a crazy spike here. We got hit the hardest first, and then people here are generally, pretty good about, taking the mask stuff seriously.
Right.
So it's been pretty under control. So, in my school district, the schools are opening up. We get food from restaurants. I have not dined in a restaurant
Hmm.
um, since this happened inside, but um, we've done takeout and stuff like that. We're getting haircuts from my wife. She's been doing a good job with that. So
Nice. Holding it down.
yeah,
That's important. I did my wife used to give me haircuts and then she got like sick of it. She was like, dude, you got to get your own haircut like before pre-COVID. And then I did the like coronavirus head shave at one point.
yeah,
I did like a four and then she cut it after that. And then stuff has kind of opened back up out here. So, um,
yeah.
but
What
yeah,
happened
that
was
was,
she cut my son's hair, and then I was like, that came out really good, actually. Like,
uh,
why did you give me a try? And it came out pretty good.
nice, nice. And do you cut her hair or is that above your
No,
pay grade?
I'm,
Yeah.
I'm not touching that.
Yeah.
In trouble.
That'd be an issue. So we were going to talk. I saw a tweet you posted that was super interesting to me because you guys were talking about remote, basically training kind of junior developers
Yeah,
remotely, and that's been like one of the most consistent themes that I've seen as I see a lot of remote developer hires and stuff like that. And one of the most consistent things I've heard from almost everybody is like, yeah, working remote is great if you can work with somebody who's more senior level, kind of work more
yeah,
independently. And so that's almost like one of the like rules that I almost thought was like unchangeable, that like just because like it tends to be um, so much harder to take somebody that's junior and train them, give them all the context they need and stuff like that. And then I saw your tweet that you did that recently in your
yeah,
capacity as something digital. So I was like, I got to hear all about this and kind of pick your brain on it. So
yeah.
that was what I was curious to hear more about.
Yeah, for sure. Um, and before COVID, that was my perspective as well on it. And everybody I had trained, I am an in-person, I work in an office. And whenever we were hiring somebody junior, they would come to the office for training.
Right.
Um, and I would be there and able to deliver it in a face-to-face, in-person capacity.
Right.
Um, we would then transition people. We do have remote managers at Something Digital and remote tech leads, so
Hmm.
people would then move to a team where their manager and tech lead or PM would be remote, but they would
Right.
continue to come into the office, was the way that we had always done it. Um, and I mean, Something Digital is a growing company. E-commerce is, for better, I mean, for better for us, but, even with, COVID, like we're still growing. And we still have a need to bring on new developers. So,
It's one of
and
those things
our
that it's
growth,
like out of necessity, like you guys sort of had to start figuring that out and then you just basically started figuring it out, right?
well, yes and no. I mean, I would say that we're pretty well positioned, I think, to be successful with it. Um, and the reason is because we put a lot of thought into what the training and onboarding experience looks like for our new developers. So most of the recruiting we do is, I mean, we recruit experienced developers, but we really like to grow from like a entry level position. We recruit at career fairs at colleges.
Mhm.
And we recruit a lot of people that have a baseline computer science degree. And when we go to the career fairs, we're when we interview people, obviously web experience is helpful. A lot of people who have computer science degree haven't even really touched the web. They
Mhm.
learn Java, and maybe they're writing something that they run on their desktop in Java, or writing some kind of
MATLAB and stuff
maybe
like
they
that.
learn some yeah maybe they learn
Yeah.
some Python, and they're doing some data analysis and that kind of a thing. So we try to skew towards some web experience. Hey, even if it's a side project, and we find if they've worked on a side project and are passionate about it, that's a good signal and a good sign as well. But people that have done stuff related to the web, building web pages, just doing basic like HTML and CSS stuff. But and then we also do hire from like an attitudinal perspective as well.
Mhm.
But that's where we recruit out of. And so we at one point it was pretty disorganized, I would say. uh, we would bring people on, and they would be needed for some team, and they'd go to the team, and then whoever their tech lead or manager was at that time would have to figure out, what do I need to do to get this person up to speed. I know, like, at one point when I would have new people, I would be like, oh, okay, go watch Magento U, Magento, development introduction course on demand, 40-hour course, do that, and then spend another week, spend 2 weeks, and then spend another week just trying to, play with it and learn about it. And then, okay, I'm going to give you your first ticket after that.
Mhm.
And I don't think that would have worked if that was our strategy um, with COVID and trying to onboard people. And I don't think it was that successful anyway. I mean, it wasn't like we had, we were losing people all the time, and it wasn't a complete disaster. But I would say we leveled it up a lot to the point where like we have something really good at this point, and I think that's helped a lot with making it a success. Um,
I mean, and it's interesting you say that because this is like one of the general themes with COVID is that like a lot of the strengths, not just specific to remote or specific to training remotely, but there's lots of cases where like stronger companies have gotten stronger in COVID, and like the strengths that you have been putting in place, whether it's training or whether it's being good at doing marketing or whatever, like have translated post COVID. You know what I mean? And it
mhm,
sounds like a similar kind of theme there where like you were improving your
yeah.
process, and like having a stronger process is so much more important with remote training, right?
Yeah, exactly. I'd say so I mean, I could go through, what that program looks like, but one thing I
Yeah.
would just really want to call out that I think is huge and was really helpful um, when we were in the office, but even more helpful when we were onboarding somebody to, a new college grad, their first job. And they're not going into the office, they're at home, they're not meeting their coworkers face to face. So the one element that's part of the training program is what we call shadowing. And basically it's we pair them up with somebody who's an experienced employee,
Hmm.
and they get to see what they're doing.
Hmm.
But we made like more of a structured system, so we have like this 8 week onboarding program
Hmm.
that we call it Jumpstart. And we have it where every week they are specifically paired up to shadow a different person.
Nice.
And we have it also cycle between all the different roles at the organization. So it's not just, okay,
Nice.
I hired a new developer. They're going to work with they're going to shadow a new developer every week.
Hmm.
1 week they'll shadow a dev, 1 week they'll shadow a PM, 1 week they'll shadow a designer. So
Nice.
they'll see like all the different aspects and roles of the business. And if you're fresh out of college, you don't really know what these things are.
Right. And
Um,
how does the with the shadowing, I'm
yeah,
curious to drill to double click on that a little bit.
yeah,
To drill into that is like how closely exactly are they working with that person that they're shadowing? Is it like 8 hours a day, every single thing on their
yeah.
screen they're
No.
seeing? Is it like a couple hours? Like what is that? What does that look
Yeah.
like in the nuts and
So
bolts?
the shadowing is happening. They're paired up for a week with somebody, and they have a lot of other stuff going on for that week. So it's just an element of the 8 week program. We have like a full
Got it.
calendar of activities. So for developers, they are doing Magento training and a lot of other like Magento
Right.
development training during that
Right.
time.
Right.
But in terms of how much time that is, basically also we don't want to tell if somebody's going to be shadowed. We don't want to tell them, oh, this person's going to be shadowing you the whole time, and they're going to be with you for the whole week, right? Like it's going to take them more time to get anything done because everything they
Right.
do, they're going to have to stop and say, hey, oh, I'm doing this, oh, you have these questions, right? It's going
Right.
to take like probably 2 times as much or maybe even more to get the stuff
Right.
done. So we find that just a couple hours a week,
Oh, got
one or
it.
two things that they work on over the course of the week. And what we tell people is, try and loop. We put it on the person who's being shadowed to say, you know, try and find something that you're going to work on over the course of the week that really like characterizes your role. So if it's a
Mm. Mhm.
PM, it's a status update call, and it's like,
Mhm.
hey, I have a status update with the client. Okay, let's I'm going to loop you in on the prep. Okay, now we're
Right.
going into the call.
Right.
Now here's the follow up, and they see the whole thing.
Nice.
So it's kind of on the person who's being shadowed to pick like one or two things that they're going to do over the course of that week that really characterize the essence of what the role is.
Mhm.
But that's enough. And we another thing we have is a daily stand up
Mhm.
for during our onboarding. So we'd like to onboard like a group of devs. So we did this for the first time remote in June
Mhm.
with the June grads, right?
Mhm.
And we brought on six. We actually hired entirely backends. We usually do a mix of backends and front ends. This time it was all backends.
Mhm.
But we do a morning stand up, and then every morning, it's your traditional stand up. What you do. All right, what are we going to do today? But we
Mhm.
also go through and talk about the shadowing. So everybody talks about, oh, I shadowed this
I
person
love it.
yesterday, and
Yeah,
everybody can hear the shadowing that the other person did. And
that's great.
there's always the stand-ups run by either me or we have other people involved. When we had 6 people, it was a little too much for me to manage it on my own.
Yeah.
But so we'll dig in and try to like get them to elaborate more on what's happening and maybe provide some more context on it. Um,
And is it the
so yeah, I mean,
group? Is it like the cohort of new people that are doing their own stand up, or is it a stand up with the rest of the team and they're part of it?
it's the cohort of new people, and then there's also somebody will be in charge if like kind of their temporary manager just for that 8 week period.
Right.
And in this past time, I think we typically had 2 people involved, and then we usually have a few other people involved just because of PTO and other stuff like that.
Right.
um,
That's really interesting. Like it's like it's simple. Like you said, it's not necessarily a lot, but having some structure to that, I think probably makes it much more effective than maybe the typical company that's just like, oh, like figure it out, like
yeah,
because there's always that tension of you want to give as much attention as possible to the new people, but the existing people got to get work done. So like finding that optimal balance is like where the magic is, and where you can easily probably, because like the new person doesn't want to like bug the existing person they're shadowing, so they might be hesitant to ask questions. So then like the stand up seems really useful there, so they can really kind of calibrate like, am I doing too much, too little, like, because at the end of the day, people are going to react to what their peers are doing, right? So like, and that's the other cool thing about having a group of them is like, if it's just one person starting, you could have as much structure as you want. They might feel isolated. They might feel like they don't know, the right amount of engagement and stuff. So that I like that mix of stuff that you have going on.
Yeah, and then I mean, in addition to the shadowing, they're also all getting the same assignments at the same time.
Right.
So, like, we mix it up with, when I'm hiring, when we're onboarding a Magento developer, they'll study a unit from the Swift Otter study guide. And then we'll say, okay, you just learned about plugins. Okay, now here's an assignment that you have to build that involves using a plugin. And then they all get the assignment together at the same time. And,
Right.
I tell them to, try and figure it out independently. I'm sure they're, chatting with each other as well too,
Right.
about how to, how to do stuff, or even just stuff like, setting up my development environment and stuff like that. They're kind of in it together.
Right. How do you like that? Setting up dev environments is that classical example of something that like sometimes you just need somebody to walk over to your computer and like help you get it going. Like how have you dealt with that like remotely?
So the other thing that goes with having the structure, the structured program with the shadowing and like all scheduled out activities is documentation. So when we're getting Magento developers started, we actually have them set up. They're going to have to set up 3 development environments in 8 weeks. So that's actually a lot of time. But the first thing they have to do is set up Valet Plus environment.
Okay, right.
And the other thing that we have like this batch of jump starters starting every 6 months roughly.
Jump starter,
like
is that the word for?
That's what we call.
Yeah.
So we have them starting in we call the Jumpstart program. We have them starting in June and then in January basically.
Got it.
But at the end of so it's an 8-week program, and the last thing they have to do is make a contribution to our documentation. So we have a repo on our GitHub organization. We keep all of our documentation in Markdown. We have a guides repo, and so the January cohort had created initially for Valet, there was like this, I don't know how you pronounce his name, Dave, the page builder guy, Dave McCauley has like a blog post about setting up a Valet Plus environment for Magento. And, originally I just given it to them and say, hey, follow this guide. But it turns out like every time you get a new version of Mac OS, like it's a little bit different. And, there's all these gotchas like, oh, wait, this, oh, you already had MySQL installed. Oh,
You
have to uninstall MySQL. And it's all this weird stuff.
It's so funny because I recently got a new Mac and I installed Valet Plus and it was like piece of cake, done, easy, like nothing at all. But then back maybe a year ago when I first saw him and others talking about it, I was like, oh, let me get that set up. And I ran into all sorts of random stuff. And then
I've never been able to get it set up.
And then everybody was like, yeah, it's so easy. And I was like, I was running all these weird bugs and stuff. But then this more recent time, it was exactly the way everybody said it would be. It was just a piece of cake, because it was like a fresh system, I guess.
Yeah. So the January 2020 cohort made like a guide of how to set up Magento that on Valet Plus that was, covered all the gaps and,
nice.
The blog post I had sent them. So then in June, I said, hey, go follow this blog post. And guess what? Like if there's anything wrong, I'd like you to, update it. with any new issues that you encounter that aren't covered there. So
Hmm.
having good documentation, I think, is really helpful too. Ideally, it's just a step-by-step process that you could follow,
Hmm.
and you get what you want in the end of it.
Right. That's cool. And then so you're saying there's three environments they're going to set up in the jumpstart period, and so one's Valley Plus, and then are the other two just project specific or?
So they have to set up completely fresh out of box Magento. That's the first thing they ever have to do.
Hmm.
Uh, not That's not the first thing they ever have to do, but it's the first environment they have to set up. We don't even assume that they know PHP or MySQL or Git or anything like that. So we start out with some of those basics. But when they're ready to get to Magento, they have to set up a completely clean Magento out of box install. And then they next have to set up, we have an accelerator kind of base Magento install at SD that we base all of our build projects off of. So the
Right.
next thing they have to do is they have to set up accelerator, our accelerator, and that they have to do it with Docker,
Hmm.
because that's we're rolling out Docker more and more our organization. So that there's a process for setting it up with Docker. They need to become familiar with that. So that's the second one they have to set up.
Hmm.
And then the third one, and this is another interesting thing we do in Jumpstart, is and I think Philip had shared this at one point. We try to get the jump starters to make a pull request to Magento core.
Hmm.
So in order to do that, you can't like set up a composer install of Magento. You have to clone it from GitHub.
Hmm.
And the directory structure has changed. The modules are in app code, and
Right.
so the first time they do it, it's just a composer install.
Right. Right.
Um,
Right. Right. Right.
so that's a third, is setting up the GitHub clone for trying to make the contribution.
That's cool. So, but it's cool that it's like three predetermined kind of environments versus like, oh, you're going to have to install X random and project specific environments that, and then the fact that probably the whole cohort is working on those same things, they can probably kind of help each other or,
Yeah.
if they're anything like me, they're like running around like a chicken with their head cut off the first time they're trying to get it set up, but at least they have like you
Oh
said, the
God.
documentation and people to bounce things
Yeah,
off
I
of.
mean, we actually did before. Just we would do like, hey, this is going to work out better if somebody could just sit over your shoulder. So like when there was no COVID, we would just schedule like a workshop. Like, okay,
Right.
we're going to schedule
Right.
a 2-hour workshop, and we're all just going to sit in a room together,
Yeah, that's what
and
everybody does.
I'm
Yeah.
just going to go around the room and help everybody fix their problems,
Right.
basically.
Right.
And,
That's what everybody
but
does.
yeah, it didn't work out bad, and I think because we had done the documentation was big. The other thing we see is that with the regular cadence of bringing people on every 6 months,
Hmm.
like the people who just did it are typically pretty eager to like help out the new
Mm.
cohort. Like they
Hmm.
like
Hmm.
to have that, like, you know experience. I'm experienced, I went through this, and they want to provide guidance. So a lot of
Right.
times they'll actually, and it's helpful with them too, because it's the most fresh in their minds.
Hmm.
Like for me, I haven't learned Magento.
Totally.
It was years and years and years ago, so sometimes I'm
Right.
not even in the best position to
Right.
help explain things.
It's almost like that, like it's the person that's one step ahead of you that's better to teach you versus the person that's 10 steps ahead of you because they've
Yeah.
already forgotten about that. That's really cool. And I also really like that you have that regular cadence of onboarding, because so many companies that I see, they're hiring ad hoc as projects come up, something's coming up, so they're trying to hire someone within a couple weeks. Um, and there's something that seems very like a lot more manageable of having like those two times of the year where you're onboarding people, and then you're taking this process, you're kind of repeating this process with multiple cohorts, and then you can have like, let's say 6 people at a time or whatever. So you can kind of, versus if you just had one person at a time, it's like, well, is the person having issues, or is the process, like, it probably makes it more obvious where the problems with the process are versus like
Yeah.
individual challenges and stuff like that. So yeah, that's a really, and then of course the downside of that is that, I mean, you guys probably, you have to schedule your work in such a way that, like, if you need to hire somebody right away for a project, it sounds like you're making the trade-off of a more steady, repeatable process of onboarding people on a regular basis versus like, oh, we need to ramp up for a big project and hire people randomly real fast,
Well, we do both.
Or you do a little bit of both, probably, yeah.
We do both. Yeah. I mean, this is specifically with hiring college grads.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
Yeah. But we also, we'll do more ad hoc type hiring with experienced people if, when we need to.
That makes sense. Yeah. So then you can kind of have the best of both worlds. But yeah, that seems like a really nice structure.
Yeah, and because I think what we were talking about here was more, for hiring an experienced person, in theory, they can ramp,
they can just jump in.
That much ramp up, right? I mean, they're going to need to learn our process,
Right.
So which branch do I, submit my PR to and all that stuff. But
yeah, I mean, that's generally what's happening. People are hiring more senior devs. They're kind of just, the burden is on them to get in and figure things out and stuff like that. So, yeah, that's cool. I mean, it's like you said, it's not that complicated, but having all those pieces in place, all working together, I think makes a huge difference. Like I said, like I talk to a lot of people that hire, and I don't know that, like, you might be sort of on the cutting edge of kind of figuring this out, even though like it's not necessarily rocket science, but like a lot of those pieces of the puzzle, I think a lot of companies haven't quite figured out. And I think more and more are going to have to, like, you're just going to have to, there's just like, I mean,
it took a lot of planning to get this together. Sorry to jump in, but it didn't just happen. Like,
yeah,
there was a lot of people were involved with discussing how to structure this, but luckily we had done that and started thinking about that before any of the COVID stuff, and
right.
It helped us, be better positioned for that.
Yeah, I'm really impressed with it because, it's the first I've heard of a company really systematically training juniors remotely. So it's pretty cool. And
yeah, I mean, there's definitely gaps. Obviously, there's stuff that's just irreplaceable. Like, we bring you out to lunch on your first day. That didn't happen.
Yeah, yeah.
We get the whole team together. We don't just bring you out to lunch. We bring that whole cohort together, and whoever is going to be like, there's no way to replace that. But
yeah,
I think we've done it as well as we could.
Yeah. How do you think things are going overall with Magento, with the community, with the product? Like, what's your feeling, 20,000-foot view on the state of Magento / Adobe?
Yeah, I mean, it's we're doing a lot of Magento Cloud work these days. So it less and less on premise, which has its pros and its cons. It's still challenging to debug the cloud environment, but it's also nice to not be responsible for infrastructure issues. But it can also be, clients can get frustrated about infrastructure issues, and
right.
we can't do anything about it. And so we get, we're in the middle of the client and Adobe,
right.
To, try to explain to our client, what's going on, but at the same time, our hands are tied in some cases.
Right.
I don't know. It's weird. It's hard to say too, because, with COVID, there's, I haven't been to any Magento events really. So it's I don't, I went to Imagine a bunch of times. I haven't been recently, so I don't know what the vibe is like
Right, right.
at those kind of things. So I think that it's hard to have a sense of what's going on with the community. But I mean, I I know that there's people there. I think some people are seeing a trend of some people moving away from Magento.
Mm,
I think that's maybe happening to some degree as it becomes more enterprise focused, I guess.
hmm.
But I mean, I still see a lot of the same people since I've been involved in Magento. It's still a pretty large group, and I don't, I see a lot of the same people are still involved in it. So, I mean, I
Yeah.
think it's still pretty solid. Um,
It's interesting. It's like me and Philip actually recorded yesterday, and we were talking about how it's like on the one hand there is movement from Magento to other platforms. I mean, even myself personally, I've been trying to better understand some of the other ecosystems and stuff like that. Um, but at the same time, each of the platform ecosystems are also kind of either doing totally fine or growing themselves. So it's like, the sector is growing so much that, like, even if there is some attrition, like, it's also everything is kind of growing,
right.
like simultaneously. But yeah, I
Yeah.
saw the thing you were posting about, like, trying to figure out a database logger,
Yeah.
like on
You
demand.
got anything for that?
I, it's funny. I was like trying to remember if the last time I was doing Magento development, I had to deal with that, and I was pretty sure I did, but I couldn't remember. I was like, I thought I would have had to build something like that before, but I couldn't remember or find anything. But yeah, have you figured anything out for that yet?
It doesn't seem like there is anything. We might have to build it at SD
Yeah,
unless somebody else comes along and build it before, which
yeah.
I would be okay with too. That's what happened with the upgrade helper. Um, we like at what on Magento one. I mean, I do get the sense to some degree that the community seems a little muffled. Is the word that I would use. Like I felt like at one point there was more blooming
Mm,
community projects kind of popping up all over the place, and
mm-hmm,
I don't see that as much anymore. I
mm-hmm.
don't know how much of that is because Magento is on GitHub. There's always like, should this go
Right,
to core? Should this be a module? At one point I was very gung ho that like everything should go to core because
right.
then it's going to be in every project by default. But like the timeline for getting that rolled out, like I mean, none of our clients are on Magento 2.4 right now. I don't think Magento even accepts pull requests to 2.3 as far as I know currently. So, it's going to be 12 months or whatever before, I'm even able to
Right.
use anything that went to core, assuming that it was, it was even merged into a release
Right.
at that time. So,
I remember talking. It might have been like a year ago to one of the guys at I4 over in Spain that does a lot of that was doing a lot of core contributions, and I can't remember the name of the thing that they used, but they had a really nice tool that let them create a pull request or whatever, and then patch it in to their
yeah.
local code base so that you could kind of
Oh,
have,
yeah, yeah.
but without you. Okay, so you guys do something similar.
We do that. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's called Composer Patcher.
there you go.
So,
Yeah,
yeah.
but it's probably still like a little bit of overhead with like managing different versions and stuff. So
Yeah,
there's
and in theory, if I do that, then that PR might then get modified, and then my patch is not, you know,
right,
the
right,
same version, and maintaining the patches.
right.
Uh, yeah,
There's
I
nothing
mean,
that's going to be
we
as
use
simple
them.
as just using your own local code pool or community code pool thing for your own project, or if you, or your own company that you can all use. That's going to be the simplest route to take, most likely.
Yeah. Yeah, we use Composer Patcher mainly just for core bug fixes. So like if there's a bug in core that we've identified, we'll
Right.
use a Composer patch for that. Or if it's there's a fix for this in the 2.4 branch or whatever,
Hmm.
we'll pull that. Or sometimes we'll identify a patch. Actually, Magento support uses those files very heavily.
Hmm.
If there's a bug and you report it to them, and they have a fix, they're going to give you a composer patch
Right.
for it. So we
Right.
use that, but we haven't used that to like install an entirely new feature.
Yeah,
Um,
that makes sense.
is for
More
us.
so for like little bug fixes. Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. Um, Yeah, and I mean, for example, the logging feature you were talking about, like, and I saw like Ben was like saying, like, is that something that should be in core? And you were like, well, I need it like in the near future, like i.e.
Yeah,
now, and like, that's always like kind of the tension, of like,
yeah,
but at the same time, it's like you're saying there is so much happening in GitHub, and like you look at the statistics of like the contribution that's happening, and there's just
yeah,
a ton. Like it's insane. And so yeah, maybe there are. It's funny because when you said that you see less like community open source projects popping up, I was like, yeah, I kind of feel the same way. But maybe that's a good thing because it's being funneled into the core. Um, you know.
yeah. There's a really high barrier to get stuff into core. Like I mentioned that we have the jump starters try to submit a PR to core. I don't
Hmm.
think any of them has ever gotten their PR merged. Um,
Oh, okay.
one of them might, which is the one that Philip had shared, which is Bradley. His might have gotten merged, but I feel like it took like over a year, maybe. Um, and the the problem, the thing that's the really high entry barrier to entry is the tests generally. Like the
Mhm.
test suite is there's so many test suites, and I don't know that anybody know like. I mean, if you know about it, you'll know how to do it. But like trying to figure out how to get them running locally and all that is,
Right.
yeah, a challenge.
Yeah, I was talking to David Manners recently, and he was saying that he was like a big fan of the Magento test automation framework, and I was
Yeah.
like, really? I was like, because I feel like not that many people actually use that. So I was kind of surprised, but I guess he's got it into his workflow, you know.
Yeah, I haven't used it. I mean, I'm familiar with, the PHP unit,
Yeah, yeah,
the unit tests and even the integration tests I've worked with, but I have not worked with
yeah.
the functional testing
I
framework.
I mean I worked with it back in the day and maybe several years ago, and it was relatively slow, and then it would like fail. It'd be like dot 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 dot, dot fail after like 7 minutes or something. Um,
Yeah.
but anyway, so Axe Madwick Beats. I
Yeah.
had I had no idea that you designed. Is it called designing music beats, or you create beats or whatever?
Produce, I guess,
Produce,
probably.
produce.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Produce.
How long you been doing that for?
Um, I think I started in high school in 10th grade, I want to say.
Hmm.
Uh, so whenever that was, a long
Nice.
time ago. Um, yeah, but before that, I played in bands. I originally played guitar, and then I learned drums. And I think, to me, there's like a close like if you know how to play drums, it's kind of leads into making beats because a lot of beats is like drum. Drum is like kind of the main
Right, like
aspect
the
of it.
foundation of it. Yeah.
Yeah. Uh,
Nice.
yeah. So I just got back into it.
That's
recently,
cool.
although I haven't done it for a while. I actually just ordered a new desk,
Uh,
but it's very backlogged. I think the place that I ordered the desk from, they're like 3 to 4 months to ship the desk.
oh wow.
But yeah, but so I think it's coming in November.
Okay.
Um,
And
but
that
that's one other problem I have is my desk doesn't have enough room for me to put my monitors on.
gotcha.
Um, and also like we only have one desk in our house right now, so I share it with my wife, and she wants to put her sewing machine on it, and so I can't leave my stuff on it all the time, and
Right.
yeah.
That's cool. So your wife sews like clothes? Does she make clothes and stuff like that?
She made all our masks.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay, nice.
but yeah, I mean, if she had more time, I think she would do more. But she has made clothes before
That's
as
cool.
well. Yeah.
Nice. Um, I just noticed your ductless AC in the background there, and you were
Yeah, it's
also
brand new.
yeah.
Do you have the system?
So I don't, but I had this like phase where I was like hardcore looking into like tiny houses and stuff like that,
Yeah.
and also like van life. Like, have you ever looked into like van life? It's this whole like
No.
Instagram hashtag, whatever people get vans and they basically customize them. They deck them out. So they'll put in like an AC like that. They'll put in like nice flooring and fridges. They basically turn it into like an RV.
Hmm.
So anyways, like I was looking at those like LG mini splits quite a bit
Yeah.
as I was doing all
Oh,
that
we got
research.
Mitsubishi.
Oh, did you? Okay.
Yeah. So I had done a lot of research on this, and my uncle actually owns a property management business. So
Oh, nice.
he has like a lot of experience with them. Like he manages properties that have like multiple properties that have, the systems from different manufacturers. And he was like very emphatic that like you should definitely get Mitsubishi
Okay.
because we were originally looking at Daikin, and
Okay.
then he's like, yeah, I got some Daikin, I work with them, but they give me some problems. I never had problems with the Mitsubishis. So like, okay,
Nice. Nice.
you sound like you know what you're talking about.
Right, right, right. That's always like when you're doing research on like some kind of a purchase like that, like when somebody really like you can just get lost searching online and reading a bajillion reviews and stuff, but then like
Yeah, you go
if
on
you just
Reddit and you're like,
yeah, like
Reddit HVAC. I don't know if you've been on that Reddit before.
no, no, I never done that. You've gone much deeper than I have on this, but like if you just know somebody who you can trust who has a lot of experience and they can just point you in a direction, it's like it's such a
Yeah.
relief, you know.
Yeah,
Um,
we were really unsure too about because we're in the Northeast, and you'll see like people even one of the companies we called, which doesn't specialize in the ductless systems. They're just more of like we have oil, which is really popular in Northeast, oil heat.
yeah, okay,
Um, and we had called our company that had been servicing our boiler, and we're like, yeah, we're interested in the ductless system. Like, what are you talking about? Like, there's no way that's going to work in the Northeast.
right, 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 right.
And so we had seen all this conflicting information. Like, is it, can it, really heat the whole house in a Northeast in the winter? And then, fortunately, I called my uncle. He's like, yeah, I can do it. Like, I run properties that do that. Like, you could definitely do that. And we're like, okay,
Right,
cool. Like, he's actually done it before.
right. So it's working out so far for like for the summer heat, and then you got to just hope like most likely it'll work out for the winter.
Yeah, I mean, we just had like it was put in like first week of September, so we only used it for cooling for like one one day because
Mm,
there's only been like one day since it's been put in that it was
yeah,
warm.
it's finally kind of cooled down. Like,
Yeah. So, but we're getting into the heating season here pretty soon. I mean, it was in the 40s this morning. So
oh, okay. Oh, really? Wow.
in New York, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Nice. Awesome, man. Well, this is a lot of fun getting a chance to catch up and pick your
Yeah.
brain on, especially all the remote hiring and stuff. So thanks for that. Where's the best place for people to find you online?
I'm on Twitter. I look at it probably every day. So you can go on there. Max P. Chadwick. And from there, you can find links to my other stuff. You could also check out my website, which has a lot of content, almost 200 blog posts actually on my website. That's maxchadwick.xyz. So that would be the other place to look.
Nice. Solid XYZ domain you got there.
Yeah, I couldn't get the .com was sold out.
Right. Awesome. Well, thanks, man. Good stuff. And we'll talk to you soon.